Okay. Paano naman kapag mababa yung glucose level natin, tas depleted din yung glycogen? Walang glycogen na pwedeng i-convert to glucose. But of course, kailangan natin ng ATP for our bodily function. Magkakaroon naman ng reaction na or metabolic pathway na gluconeogenesis. Okay? Gluconeogenesis is a metabolic pathway wherein glucose is synthesized from a non-carbohydrate material. Okay? So kanina kasi sa gluconeogenesis, carbohydrate material kasi si glycogen eh. So glycogen will be converted to glucose, parehas silang carbohydrate or carbohydrate. Pero kapag ang source natin ng glucose is a non-carbohydrate material such as pyruvate, okay, ang process ang tinatawag ay gluconeogenesis. Okay? So glycogen stores in muscles and liver are depleted within 12 to 18 hours from fasting or in even less time from heavy work or strenuous exercises. So without gluconeogenesis, the brain, which is dependent on glucose as a fuel, would have problems functioning if food intake is restricted even for one day. Okay, so yun nga. So, hindi kumain, nag-exercise ng madami, pero syempre kailangan ng glucose ng brain. So, saan siya kukuha? Okay, saan siya kukuha? From non-carbohydrate material in the form of pyruvate. Okay, or from the lactate that was stored in the muscle. So, paano ba itong gluconeogenesis? Okay, recall lang natin that the glycolysis kanina will start from glucose. 10 steps to, di ba? Magiging glucose 6-phosphate, then until pyruvate. Okay, so 10 steps yung glycolysis. But during the gluconeogenesis, okay, let's take note that these are not gluconeogenesis is not the exact opposite. Okay, not the exact opposite of the glycolysis reaction. Okay, so pabaliktad naman tayo. Gluconeogenesis from pyruvate, hindi siya kaagad-agad magiging phosphoenol pyruvate. Rather, ito yung sinasabi nilang kung bakit hindi siya exact reverse or exact opposite. Kasi si pyruvate undergo muna siya sa conversion into oxaloacetate. Okay. If it rings a bell kung bakit parang common yung oxaloacetate sa pandinig natin, kasi nga, oxaloacetate is one of the intermediates in the Krebs cycle, yung kasama, yung parang product ng last step dun sa Krebs cycle. So from pyruvate, magiging oxaloacetate muna siya, of course with the presence of pyruvate, carboxylase, and ATP and carbon dioxide. So from oxaloacetate, doon pa lang siya magiging phosphoenol pyruvate with the presence of phosphoenol pyruvate carboxykinase, and kailangan din daw ng GTP. So itong step na to ang dahilan kung bakit hindi exact opposite si glycolysis kay gluconeogenesis. Yes. Okay, so from that phosphoenol pyruvate, pwede na ulit siyang maging fructose 1,6 bisphosphate, and then it will then undergo reactions at magiging fructose 6-phosphate. Okay, so this time, ito yung isa na namang difference nila. During the glycolysis, gumamit tayo ng phosphofructokinase and kailangan natin ng ATP para ma-convert si fructose 6-phosphate kay fructose 1,6 bisphosphate. Pero this time, during the gluconeogenesis, hindi na natin kailangan daw ng ATP. Okay? At ang kailangan nating enzyme is fructose 1,6 bisphosphatase. Okay? And from there, from fructose 6-phosphate, mag-undergo siya ng isomerization reaction at para maging glucose 6-phosphate. Okay, and then here, the last step para ma-achieve natin yung glucose, ang kailangan natin ay glucose 6-phosphatase, not the hexokinase. And of course, no ATP is required for this conversion. Okay, so pabalik sana siya sa from pyruvate to glucose, pero meron yung mga important details dito na hindi nila ginagamit or meron silang gagamitin na hindi ginamit sa glycolysis. Okay? That's why it's not an exact opposite reaction. Okay? Then we also have Cori cycle. Sinabing Cori cycle, this is a cyclic. So, cyclic siya. Biochemical process in which glucose is converted to lactate. So, remember, lactate is one of the fate of pyruvate aside from acetyl-CoA dun sa human body. But this occurs during anaerobic reaction. Okay, so it could be stored in the muscle tissue, and the lactate is then reconverted to glucose in the liver, and that glucose is returned to the muscle tissue. So cycle nga. So the Cori cycle, we have the glucose in the active skeletal muscle, so it will undergo glycolysis. Of course, we know that the product of glycolysis is a pyruvate, and one of the fates of pyruvate is the formation of lactate. Okay, so from that, so pag na-store na yung lactate niya na yan, so kapag yun nga, depleted na naman ang ating glucose, pero kailangan natin ng glucose. So ang mangyayari, gluconeogenesis na naman. Okay? So gluconeogenesis, production of glucose from a non-carbohydrate material. So ang source ng ating gluconeogenesis would be the lactate coming from that one fate of the pyruvate. So babalik siya as pyruvate. So as you could see, 'di ba dalawa ang fate ng pyruvate sa human body. It could be an acetate. So from the pyruvate, magiging acetyl-CoA siya, tapos papasok sa Krebs cycle. Or it could be stored in the muscle as lactate. But as you could see, lactate lang ang pwedeng bumalik as pyruvate. Okay? So ito yung reversible reaction. Si pyruvate naging lactate, that's one of the fate. Pero si lactate, pwede rin siyang maging pyruvate during the gluconeogenesis in the liver and to produce the glucose needed to supply the bodily function. So that's the Cori cycle. Okay? Another metabolic pathway ng ating glucose is the pentose phosphate pathway. So this time, the metabolic pathway by which the glucose will not become a pyruvate, hindi siya magiging glycogen, rather magiging a ribose 5-phosphate. Okay? So kaya nga pentose phosphate pathway kasi nga ribose is a pentose. It has 5 carbon atoms. So this is used to produce, so during the process, meron ding NADPH na maproproduce, and of course, the pentose phosphate, and numerous other sugar phosphate. Okay, so this operation of phosphate pathway is significant in cell that produce the lipids and fatty tissues and other bodily functions. So, hindi lang siya limited to glucose na maging ATP, hindi lang siya glucose na maging acetate, hindi lang siya maging glucose na maging pyruvate, rather, pwede rin siyang mag-supply ng carbon atom coming from that glucose, mag-supply siya ng other carbon atom needed for the production of other biochemical molecules sa ating katawan. Okay? So, let's have this summary. So, yun nga sabi natin kanina that in the past discussions or past videos that as we eat carbohydrates from our dietary sources, it will undergo digestion. And of course, during digestion, yung carbohydrate complex molecules na yan magbe-break down into its building blocks, monosaccharide, and then particularly the glucose, and it will then become a glucose 6 phosphate during glycolysis. And from that, the end product of glycolysis is the pyruvate, and pyruvate could then be converted to acetyl CoA. Pero ang ating pyruvate ay 3 carbon atom molecules, so meron tayong tatanggalin na carbon dioxide kasi nga si acetyl ay 2 carbon atom molecule lang siya. And from there, the acetyl CoA is only the molecule that could enter the Krebs cycle or the citric acid cycle. Kaya, yan, pumasok siya. And, of course, mag-expel tayo or mag-produce tayo ng carbon dioxide during this stage 3. And, of course, the last is the electron transport chain and oxidative phosphorylation. Sorry. Ayan, so oxidative phosphorylation, then, napoproduce natin ng water. Okay? So, pero kapag merong mga times na low ang ating glucose level at wala na rin tayong ATP available, we could use the non non-carbohydrate materials which are lactate. So, pero alam natin na ang lactate ay um, isa sa mga fates ng pyruvate. It could be reverse or pwedeng bumalik siya kay pyruvate for the production of glucose via gluconeogenesis. So, ito yung ina-emphasize ko kanina that pyruvate has two fates in human body. They could be acetyl-CoA, which could enter the Krebs cycle, or as lactate, and they could be stored in the muscle tissues. However, during gluconeogenesis, si lactate lang ang pwedeng bumalik na maging pyruvate so that it could be converted to glucose. Si acetyl-CoA hindi siya pwedeng bumalik as pyruvate. Okay, si lactate lang. Okay? And then, so we have here the gluconeogenesis. Then, if again, the glucose is so high and we don't need ATP production, so hindi siya magpupush through glycolysis. Rather, pwede siyang ma-store as glycogen, so it will undergo gluconeogenesis. But again, if we need oxygen and glucose, depleted na ang ating glucose level pero marami pa rin tayong glycogen, that stored glycogen could be converted back to glucose via glycogenolysis. Okay? And aside from this pathway, glucose could also supply carbon atoms to other biochemical compounds in the body, and it will then be converted, or it will then follow the pentose phosphate pathway, wherein pentoses and other small sugars will be produced together with the formation of carbon dioxide. Okay? So, yan ang ating summary ng carbohydrate metabolism. Okay? So, during digestion, the stage 1, okay, conversion of pyruvate into an acetyl, that would be the stage 2, okay, and then the stage 3 is the Krebs cycle, and then of course electron transport chain and oxidative phosphorylation are the stage 4.